welcome to the Future Ventures podcast on scaling and clarity. On today's show, we have Dave Hertig, founder and CEO of Boom and Company. His work focuses on CEO performance under pressure, the moments where the stakes are high and a CEO judgment has to hold. He is the creator of the CEO Sparring System, a format inspired by boxing, where CEOs bring high-stake pieces of work into a protected room and have them pressure tested before using them in the real world. On today's episode, we are going to explore what it really means to perform as the CEO under pressure, why identity is foundational to leadership growth, and how AI is changing executive judgment, the balance between high tech and high touch leadership, and as well as why deeply understanding humans may become one of the most important competitive advantages of the next decade. Dave, welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much, Maxim. It's great to be here.
I am super excited to talk to you. One of the questions that we often get is like, what is the future of CEO looks like? Especially with the emergence of AI, how much of the decision making will be done by machine versus humans. So, and I know that you have been thinking about this for a long time, and this is kind of the area of expertise. So, why don't you just kind of give us a bit of the origin stories? What led you to focus your work on CEO performance?
So before in business, I started in business as a journalist, as a business journalist.
Okay.
And at that time, I had a lot to do with CEOs already. Later became a content marketer, and I worked for client magazines as well. And for instance, there was one from UBS, the Swiss bank. And for them alone, I visited more than 100 CEOs around the country. And
wow.
I mean, at some point, you just get the pattern and you see these people that are looked up to by so many people, they have blind spots just like everybody else. But their blind spots have outsized consequences for the whole company. And if you continue that line of thought, also for society. So that's why today in my work, I focus on CEO performance under pressure. And these are these high stake moments where the judgment of a CEO has to hold up in real life.
Yeah. From your experience, in a level, would dive deeper into the CEO under pressure. What are the most common blind spots that CEOs have?
So the biggest one, and you hear this especially from founders, I'm sure you hear it at least once every month, is that somebody comes to you and says, why are the people not like me? Do you know that one? Do you hear that one?
Well, we all want to be people that look like us, that talk like us, that have the same beliefs. So I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, if you come up, especially if you come up through the ranks, you're a managerial person, you come up through the ranks, at some point, you're a CEO, not a founder necessarily, but a hired CEO. You've come through all of these stages career-wise. You know how it works. And at that point in time, you have proven to yourself and the world that you can fight your way to where you are today. And not everybody is like you. But if you don't deeply understand humans, then you might think everybody should be like you. Everybody should want what you want or what you wanted in life. And that's just not true. People are very, very diverse, very different from each other.
And I mean, hence the saying, I think Harvard did a whole bunch of studies that essentially the same team emerged. This trend comes from diversity. And so the more diverse points of views that you have, the more well-rounded opinion and the better the thought process is.
That's what they say. That doesn't necessarily mean that the CEO or a specific CEO sees it that way too.
It's true. And quite often, like the CEOs have to be in a position where they have the authority. The CEO's job is lonely for a reason, because you have a lot of opinions, but at the end of the day, it's you who has to make the final call on those decisions. So besides kind of like sameness and likeness, what other blind spots do CEOs have?
Asked as an open question, it's just that you think your thinking is the only way that
Mm-hmm.
somebody could think.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to what I said before, but it's what has made us survive. We know this from psychology. We know it from how humanity has evolved over time.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that we've become, each and everyone as an individual, who you are, who I am, who that person is today, that has come from the context in which they grew up. And it has helped us to be successful. If success only even means to survive, that is
Mm-hmm.
how has shaped us, what has formed us. And that is different for different people. So standing here and thinking that the way that I look at the world is the way that most people look at the world is still the biggest blind spot.
Understood. Is this um, is this at the root of your belief that identity plays a massive role in leadership? Are you able to elaborate a little bit more? I mean, you talked a little bit about kind of like the upbringing, kind of like like where a CEO comes from, but can you unpack this idea?
The identity one.
Mm-hmm.
So can I say something about the other question first? Because
Of
it
course.
came up after I had responded to you. One thing that means is, for instance, there are CEOs who are much better at their job if they have a complementary person next to them. I
Mm-hmm.
give you a typical example. Somebody is a visionary founder, but there is
Mm-hmm.
chaos in execution. And I know that you are big about execution, you personally,
Mm-hmm.
Maxim. So if somebody is the visionary and is not at the same time really strong at organizing the daily operations, then the best thing that can happen to that person is to understand that, see it as a weakness, perhaps a blind spot, perhaps a weak spot, whatever you want to call that. Understand that however much effort they will put into that, they will never get to the level where they are as good at operations as they are at vision, for instance, to just
Mm-hmm.
stick with the same example. So understanding that, seeing that weakness, and then saying to yourself that it would be better to hire for your weaknesses than to
Yeah.
try to act as if you could do that job at a world-class level, or just acting as if there was no issue. That is something that would be great, and that enhances the CEO performance in the end.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, what I find is, um, and this has been my approach everywhere with my teams is like I'm trying to make them better, but I try to focus like it's like I described their skill set and careers as if it's a tool chest. I'm trying to add tools to their tool chest, but I want to give them the tools that they can use in the things that they're really good at. Like let's say if you're a carpenter, you want to have all of the right tools, but I wouldn't give you tools that a machinist would use. It's just a completely different skill set. And so for me, this is really, really important. Like I mean, studies, but also you and I hold the same belief. You are never going to be as good at your weaknesses as your strengths. So why devote attention on things that are just don't come naturally to you? And to your other point around visionary CEO execute, like you need to have somebody what is complementary or in some ways adversarial to say, hey, that's fantastic that you have all of these ideas, but it's almost more important for us to pay attention on the things we say no to than things we say no to. Because if you visionary, I have idea, I have idea, I have idea, I have idea, and it's like, which idea do we execute on first?
Yeah. I started to smile when you said adversarial,
Yeah.
because I think that's one of the most important things in the topic or in the realm of CEO performance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also one of the lacking elements for most CEOs. Even the modern CEOs that I speak with, who
Mm-hmm.
came up through the ranks and
Yep.
understood team building and everything,
Yep.
and they had great educations or training. Like
Yep.
I have one person in my mind leading a company of several hundred people, and he came through investment banking. And
Mm-hmm.
he said, before I give a presentation, I always do a dry run. And that
Yeah.
is fine, but it's not as adversarial per se,
Mm-hmm.
because the people in the business still need to work with you.
Yeah.
They still depend on you kind of liking them. And it's not absolutely clear whether if they act adversarially when they give you that dry run for your presentation, whether that would actually benefit them in their relationship with you as a CEO. So adversarial to me is a key word: stress testing, pressure testing, challenging. And I think that's one of the elements that CEOs either don't want to experience in their role, or even if they want to experience it, it's really hard to get internally. And that element, that pushback that you can get, I think is so important for your CEO performance.
It's it's hard for me to square because I love feedback. And so when I work with my team knows that they can come to me with any idea and they can challenge any idea that I have, because I view feedback as a gift. But I've worked for a number of big publicly traded corporations, and I have been part of the senior management team. And so whenever I have seen a vice president or an executive vice president disagree with the CEO, in all instances that I've observed, they have been packaged out. In some cases,
They have been what? Excuse me?
They were packaged out. They were exited out of the company. In one case, this happened on a Sunday. An executive vice president disagreed with the CEO, and all he was trying to do is protect his business unit. He wanted the autonomy to continue to grow the business unit. The companies were merging and like it was growing. On a Monday, the announcement was supposed to come out. On a Sunday, the person was like the conversation happened with the board. The person was exited. New replacement for this person was announced. So and I've seen it at public traded company after public traded company after public. To me, it's like this court leads to better decision making. So why are more CEOs not welcoming this?
I mean, you and I could give this a similar answer to that. And it's probably ego. And there's most probably also the fear of losing your role. I mean, getting challenged in the animals kingdom means that the challenger actually wants your role, right? The young gorilla wants the old gorilla to die or be cast out of the group. So perhaps there's an element of that. So, and of course, that needs to be taken into consideration. You don't want the challenge to be formulated in a way that actually challenges your authority, but you want a company in which different opinions and different takes and perspectives flow into decision making.
I completely agree. At the same company that I was referring to with this particular example, my mentor was the chief operating officer, and the advice that he had given me is like, Maxim, the way that you know that you're succeeding in a company, in the company, is when your team is high-fiving each other, and when the work does not stop, whether you're there or not. Your job is to make sure that you remove challenges and roadblocks out of the way, inspire them, give them clarity, give them autonomy, and set the direction, and then let them execute rather than like, oh, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. Like, I mean, we're doing like scrums, so we were very agile, but it's like, get out of the way, get out of the way, and remove road barriers and blocks for them.
Yeah, I think you just mentioned Scrum and Agile. It's similar to Kaizen or Lean when it comes to that element. Because one thing that they both share is the work organized in sprints. Organized in sprints means you readjust after a certain sprint period.
Of course.
Let's say every week or every second week. And that's an important element of that. And what you want to have happen is that there is somebody organizing the backlog and organizing the work that is being done at this point in time. And at all points, whenever somebody pulls a next task into their personal field of responsibility, that should be a highly prioritized task. And if you have a company or an organization like that, that means it's always focused on the goal. It's always focused on the mission. And everybody always works on something that is really important. And everything that is not really important gets left behind. That's the consequence of lean and agile. And back to your high-fiving, the team that high-fives each other, I think if you work in such an environment, then you have good reasons to high-five each other, because everybody works towards the same goal. But of course, that, and you will agree with that, even that is not necessarily the case for all the companies.
I completely agree. The other challenge that I'm seeing, and again, I put the onus on the CEO to set this right. I rarely see goal setting done right in companies. Outside of the tech industry, very, very few companies have adopted the OKR, the objectives and key results framework. And whatever goal setting that happens at these companies, it's very superficial, and it lacks the specificity. Like, for example, in my companies, in my teams, what we would do is we use Jira for the project management. We would do Confluence for communication and use Atlas for the goals. So there's a clarity and alignment. Hey, if we are trying to accomplish this as a company, this is our goal in 3 years, in 2 years, in 1 year. This is it kind of work backwards. In order for us to accomplish this, the team has to accomplish this. In order for the team to accomplish this, you have to accomplish it. And it's very, very specific. I have never seen this done right in a big corporation.
Never.
Okay. I've been a consultant with EY. I've been a consultant with Deloitte. So 13 years with them, working with big corporations. I have never. EY and Deloitte do it pretty well because they're human performance machines. But in industry, in the big corporations, I have never seen this done right.
Never seen it. Yeah. I left UBS when I was 21 years old, and then I never worked in a huge company again.
Yeah.
But of course, at UBS, for instance, the goals are just the numbers. The numbers need to increase quarter over quarter, and that's the goal. You don't hear about any other goal.
Net promoter score, customer satisfaction. No, it's just the numbers have to. Assets under management.
And by the way, Maxim, I should say, because you also defended Deloitte and EY, I should say that age 21 for me, that's a long time ago. So perhaps UBS is different today. I hope for them that they are.
Well, they're a big bank, so hopefully they've learned a thing or two over the years. Sure. And even with the Big Four, I left Big Four in 2015, so it's been 10 plus years. My understanding, again, I don't have an inside view. My understanding is that environment has changed dramatically from what I know. And partnership plans have changed, structures have changed, organizations have changed, AI has proliferated. So that environment is very different. So I'm speaking based on what I knew 10 years ago versus what those from Skin look like now.
Yeah, I like to stay away from the huge companies. One reason is, even in big I'm thinking of one, I'm not naming the company, but there is a CEO, she's a woman. And everybody speaks highly of her. And then I know the stories from the ground in one country specifically, and it's terrible. So even if you have a great CEO at the top of a huge company, several 100,000 people, you can still have a terrible experience in one country oriented unit. It's just what seems to be happening in these huge companies. So I prefer to work with the medium-sized companies, and also I think the medium-sized companies, in my case, I usually define them as 50 to 1,000 staff. They are also underserved. Like, these CEOs are really underserved. If you go to bigger companies, for instance, I give you an example of a headhunting company that also does other services on the side. For instance, you come in as the new CEO, they start preparing you 6 months before you arrive at the job. During your first 100 days, there is a person holding your hand, basically. Preparing a person from the outside the company, preparing you for each meeting that you're going to have for the first 3 months, preparing you for each person whose hand you're going to shake. And the idea behind it is that you don't make any silly mistakes while you're still onboarding with the company. Now, that is a service. I mean, imagine that. But a CEO of a medium-sized business will never see anything like that, even from a distance. So there's a lot that we can do for CEOs of medium-sized businesses, because what the services that really exist for CEOs today, I would say, are the same services that exist for another C of something. What I mean by that, as an example, if you are the CEO and you also feel in charge of the CMO role because your company is not big enough so that you have a C for everything, you're also the CMO, then you will use the same services any other CMO who is not the CEO will work with. There are not so many services for CEOs that are specific to their role.
That's interesting. I mean, onboarding, successful onboarding is probably one of the most critical foundational things companies can undertake to ensure that to ensure that you have the culture fit. So before even hire the CEO, like drive the assessment to ensure there's a cultural fit. But two, like make sure that CEO is successful. Again, like everyone talks about the first 100 days and kind of what you're going to do, and you're going to be in a listening tour. You're going to listen more than you decide and act. I get this, but this is an amazing service that all CEOs should have. Because
the way that it usually works, and I give you an example of somebody from Switzerland, and he took on a job in Paris, France, and that was the founder was leaving the company and needed a replacement for himself. He was sitting in the next room, and the team still went into his door, to his room, instead of to the new CEO. You know what I mean? And the guy accepted that. The founder accepted. That's the reality, typically, or more often in a medium-sized company. Now, that's the wild, wild west out there. And if we can help these CEOs perform better, then we have done a good job, not only for them, but also for society. I can tell you that much.
I mean, I love it. I completely agree with you. But it's incumbent upon the founder to set the right behavior, because culture is it's not necessarily the set of beliefs. It's kind of what you do when you're not watching. So the reason why people are going into the founder's office rather than the CEO's office is because he was allowing it. He should was like, hey, go talk to the CEO. That's who
you and I know. You and I know. The incoming CEO knows. But now talk to the other guy. You know, I'm just saying there is a wild, wild west out there, and the CEOs of medium-sized businesses. In this case, we're speaking about those who come into a company and directly into the role of the new CEO. They don't usually experience that kind of onboarding that we talked about for the big time or the big company CEOs.
For sure. Dave, I wanted to go back to something that you said a couple minutes earlier about the female CEO. Now, there's numerous studies that have proven that women make better turnaround CEOs than men because of empathy or other factors. Now, you have the CEO Sparring System, and there's kind of like this belief that if a woman is aggressive, or maybe kind of to use the boxing analogy, they're seen as pushy, as aggressive, and like the things that we prize and value in men are maybe in some ways seen as negative in women. So kind of like what is your perspective on kind of the differences in connotations of male CEO versus female CEOs, and kind of like how should they behave differently, or kind of like how would they apply the CEO Sparring System different, or do they at all apply it differently?
I don't know whether it's between women and men, because I feel that also men do some. So it's being said out there that I think that's what you're alluding to. Very oftentimes, it seems to be the case that women who come up into a CEO position seem to act almost like men. That's what's being said out there, right? I think that many men are also acting like an example of a man that they are not. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It's
Yes.
in my mind, not every woman is like every woman. Not every man is like every man. And I
Yeah.
see men who are very good at empathy. And by the way, when we did our ideal profile for CEOs, and I didn't do that myself, it was based on what's out there in terms of research. One thing that came out is that an ideal CEO is really good at working with people, really good around people. It's so the image that we have, I would say, from the media and perhaps also from Hollywood, because in Hollywood, if somebody is a higher up, usually the way they get their authority is by shouting. In Hollywood especially, if somebody's not happy with performance, they clear their desk, right? They throw everything to the ground. They have an outburst of emotion. That's something that happens too. That's not the medium-sized businesses CEOs that I see. Most of these people come from a sales-oriented role or from a marketing-oriented role. More rarely, they have been the chief HR officer before that. But CEO, sales and CEO, in a way, share some traits of the ideal profile. Because both of them, ideally, would be really good at humans, understanding humans, interacting with humans, and in a way, just be able to create these environments where others feel good and feel confident and feel seen and feel appreciated, and then start to flourish somehow.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, most modern personality assessments would have kind of like, how do you view yourself versus how others view you? It's kind of like the inner persona versus the outer persona. What do you have any observations there in terms of, is there a big delta in gap between how people behave innately versus how they behave outwardly?
That I'm not sure about. Can you please say that again?
So, you know how it most personality assessment would have you like they would phrase the question in such a way that they're assessing how you view yourself, and then they would have questions that would
yeah. So
outward,
the question is basically the way when you take the assessment, are you actually giving off the right image of yourself?
Yes.
I want to tell you one story that I experienced. A CEO took the assessment, and I was like, this doesn't seem right.
Doesn't sound like them.
Yeah. And I went to the LinkedIn profile and copy pasted posts into the same tool, basically. I used an LLM for it. I used the chatbot for it. And I said, does this profile that they had given me match with how they communicate over here? And it didn't. And I told the person, and he completely blocked me out on that call. Like, I tried to be smooth about it, and I also hope that this would lead to a conversation that would deepen our relationship in the end. Because in my view, most probably, and I'm not saying I was absolutely right, but all the indications pointed in that direction. This person didn't really understand who they are and wanted to be somebody else, at least partially. And if that's the case, how does that help you in life? Does that really do you any good? I don't think so. So I went back to the CV of this person, and the independent assessment suggested that my version of it, together with LinkedIn, the LinkedIn post, etc., makes much more sense. And I give you the reason why I say that. It was a person who claimed to be very creative and lived in this world of the creative people, still does. But the assessment that I did said they're really about execution and very strict and in a way almost rigid, which is not a bad thing. But I think it's important for you to understand what you are. And then that person had a background in the military. And I was like, why would a visionary, a creative person, spend their first 5 to 10 years of a professional career in the military if they're visionaries and creatives? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I got my answer there, kind of.
I mean, and there's like obviously a very perfect example in terms of the juxtaposition between Steve Jobs and Tim Cook, like Apple, right? Steve Jobs was the visionary. Steve Jobs was the creative. Uh, but the person that drove the most value accretion in the company was Tim Cook. He was he's still amazing at execution. And so they're just different personalities. Just you need to know who you are. So from like if we to just double click on this, what role does authenticity play in a CEO's role, or kind of like how successful they are or they become?
I have no issue with somebody putting on a uniform when they go into their job as a CEO
Yeah.
instead of giving off everything they are. And I've seen CEOs of startups, even friends of mine, who were friends of mine before they even founded a specific company. And I'm thinking of somebody who has exited their company in the meantime. So
Yeah.
they had a successful exit. And at some point during this process of growing, and I think at the time they had around 30 people, he said to me, I needed to learn not to make jokes when I'm on a call with the team, because
Okay.
not everybody understands my jokes. So he became much more strategic in how he communicated and what he actually said and what he just decided not to say. And it was more machine-like in that sense that everything was measured. And that made a lot of sense to me. Now you could say this is not authentic because he's a joker. When he's with me,
Yeah.
he makes these jokes, he makes these statements. He also makes them just to figure out how I would react or other people would react.
Yeah.
And he stopped himself. So if that is authentic, then I don't need it in the professional life. But of course, they should, what they do in their business and what in their role as a CEO should still be a match with what makes them feel good, what they love to do. And also their strengths should fit to the role of a CEO somehow. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It does. And it's kind of like you have to fit within the environment, and it's like know your audience, because that defines how you shape the message. I mean, one of the things that they've done is of the last probably 4 or 5 years, I have spent a lot of my time thinking about change management and even becoming change management practitioner, because not because I want to specialize in change management, but the work that they do is strategy, growth, and capital. And so if I'm trying to influence strategy, you can come up with with a strategy or the business model. That's not the hard part. The hard part is making sure that everybody gets bought into this strategy. It's the change management aspect rather than coming up with a blue sky thinking.
Yeah. I have a question for you, if I may.
Of course.
Because you mentioned Tim Cook, who is now leaving his role as a CEO. And his sprint at Apple, a long sprint, right? More than a decade, will go down in history in terms of the financial results as one of the most successful tenures of a CEO.
Absolutely.
And he's a hired CEO. He's not the founder. He wasn't there at the beginning even. And he was tapped by Steve Jobs personally. So Steve Jobs, the visionary guy, after having had the experience where he got ousted from the company by an incoming CEO, had this experience, and it was traumatic for him, then came back, then said, this guy, Tim Cook, is my man. So he must have made a much better choice. Steve Jobs must have felt that he made a much better choice this time. And then this man, Tim Cook, goes on to take it to a level that nobody ever could have foreseen. Now, the criticism is not very visionary, no new products. But why I want to ask the question back to you is, you are in a business of scaling. And I think in your business, that is one of the most outstanding stories there are. So how do you see that?
I mean, I think that our views will be very much aligned. What we're seeing, and it's kind of think about it from the perspective of we work with a lot of the investors, and so the investors they kind of struggle in this dichotomy or this territory of like they want as much equity in the business, but at the same time, they want the founders to have as much skin in the game. And the reason why you want the founders to have skin in the game, because they're the visionary, they're the ones that are setting the direction. Without them, you can put the most amazing operator, but without the vision that you have to pursue, it's hard to execute. I mean, you said it right. Tim Cook is one of the most successful CEOs in history. I think that, if I remember correctly, I think he drove $2 trillion value accretions for Apple. Like outstanding. I mean, outstanding in every way in terms of execution. The most amazing supply chain person, amazing at execution. But to your point, look at the product line, look at Siri, look at the Apple Car. They just, probably the most successful product came out was the AirPods. Outside of that, what has he done? The other thing and again, this is not not a criticism to Tim Cook, because the average lifespan of a CEO is 4 to 7 years. Statistically, that's the average lifespan. It's a really, really hard job. It takes a massive toll on the CEO. 10 plus years. That's a long run for a CEO. And so it's not surprising for Apple to be looking for new energy. Now, I'm not convinced that the new person is the right person for the job, but that only time will tell this. But I do think that the smaller the company, the more important it is to have a visionary CEO. The bigger the company, and because especially if you're a publicly traded company, the more important it is to have somebody that's steady Eddie, that we know would have the right attention on the right levers to make sure the company is consistently executing on its mission, vision, and mandate.
Yeah, I think it's you. So I don't know what's going to happen next, and if this vision, the lack of vision, if we want to call it that, turns out to be a problem, then it will still take some years until we know. I mean, for the last 3 years, people said they're really behind in terms of AI, but we will see. We will see. But what it also tells us is how far the vision of Steve Jobs has taken the company. He was able to hand this over to somebody who is great at operations. That person ran with it for another 15 years, more or less.
Yeah.
And look where they are. At some point, you said at the beginning, the visionary might be more important. And I think that's most probably true. But look at what has been possible based on that foundation that Steve Jobs laid, especially in his second stint. That's amazing.
I mean, what's amazing about founders and what makes great founders, and again, this is based on hundreds, if not thousands, of conversations we've had with investors, is you want a founder that has a chip on their shoulder. They have something to prove. So if you look at, even if you take statistics on U.S. presidents, who were the U.S. presidents? If you look at who are the most successful founders in history, Steve Jobs was adopted. Steve Jobs was ousted out of his own company. He had a lot of positive anger that kind of drove him to prove what he was trying to prove. And so, I mean, he wasn't perfect. There's a lot of those stories around Steve Jobs as the CEO and in some ways being, an asshole. But he was absolutely a visionary and with dogged determination to succeed.
Yeah, and you like that. You like grit. I know that from your other interviews.
I love grit and resilience because that's what makes for great CEOs. You want founders to be able to walk through fires, to walk through walls, because you're primarily investing in them. The idea may be fantastic. The market may be big. It may be on the rise. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the right CEO to determine what direction the company should take, even the best ideas will fail.
If you happen to run into an investor who searches for a chip on the shoulder of a CEO and can't find one, give them my phone number. I will go and find the chip on the shoulder of every person in the world.
Yep. So, double click on it.
No problem there.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. As we talk to investors, they have different scoring rubrics that they use in terms of how they evaluate CEOs. One of the most common criteria that they've heard from investors is accountability.
Mhm.
Are you going to do what you say that you're going to do? That's kind of like it's the one that most commonly emerges in our conversations.
I have a question about that
Of
because
course.
are you going to do what you say you do?
Mm-hmm.
If achieve, so there's two things to that, right? One is the input. Are you going
Yep.
to give your all to achieve the goal that you set
Yep.
for us together
Yep.
to get to achieve? That is one thing, but you can never guarantee that you will get the results in the time frame that you have
True.
given
True.
from the beginning.
Yep.
These are two
Yep.
different things. Now, when I spoke of UBS or we speak about Apple, of course, they will deliver every quarter. Every quarter, the numbers will go up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
And they can do that because it's a whole different game. For startups, scale up, early scale up, I'm not so sure whether that's actually possible. We're in the Wild West again, a bit of in the messy jungle. All of us can be happy for themselves if they're out of the forest, let me put it this way. But while we're still in the jungle, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. So if you make promises to investors, they must be kind of outsized. The investor wouldn't go for a tiny promise. So they want the big promises. And if they then want the CEO to also act upon what they said they would do and the plan that they laid out, they must understand that the input must be enough. Like you go at it, you're all in and you're all out and you go at it. But it's hard at the beginning of in the early stages of a company, of a startup especially, to know exactly what's going to happen and go on.
100%. And I'll give you specific examples. The earlier the company, the more certain the outcome is because you're a small compared to a bigger player. I mean, Apple is a juggernaut, so they have a lot more control over the market than the incumbent player, at least in some aspects. Like they don't necessarily dominate in terms of mobile hardware devices, but they certainly have the stronghold over the luxury end of the mobile devices. The other aspect, so if I kind of think about the rubric, the scoring rubric that investors use to evaluate founders, after accountability, they look for integrity. So like the results are the results. And to your point, they want clarity and transparency over what's being done. Like they understand that the founder cannot control the outcome, but they want to see integrity and they want to see transparency and communication. So if there's bad news, unlike good wine, bad news don't get better with time. They want that clarity and transparency as early as possible in terms of, hey, we're doing this, it's not working out. You want to say something?
So basically, you can be, as a CEO or any person, you can be in charge of the input, make a promise, put that work in. You kind of can have or semi-control the output, but the outcome itself depends so much on outside factors that that's a different game. You said that the topic of this conversation is about high tech.
High tech, high touch? Yeah. So tell me, like, I want to dive deeper in this. Like, tell me.
And I also am interested and curious what you think about it, because AI is important to you and the companies that you work with.
Yes.
Do you think that AI is at a point where it basically is the one tool that a CEO needs and we're done?
The short answer is no. The long answer is varied. And what I mean by this is AI is amazing at decision making where is data to analyze or data to make an informed decision on.
You're talking about original data, like owned data of a company, context that is specific to a business.
Yeah. So there are a ton of companies at the moment that they're working on what they call the AI brain of a company. So essentially, how do you build I mean, in the old terminology is a data lake. The data lake just stores the data, but in this case, we're trying. The companies are looking to build retrieval augmented generation systems with pulling data from a lot of different sources, using an AI brain, or essentially like creating institutional memory for the company, for the CEO or leadership team to make informed decisions based on kind of what exists within the company, plus what they can pull from an external source. So from that perspective, AI is really, really helpful. The problem with AI is that the statistical model, right? Like it can analyze, it can compare, it can make informed decisions, can benchmark. That's fantastic. AI, I am not a believer that AI can become sentient. I'm not a believer that AI can develop EQ. It can mimic EQ, but I don't know that it can develop EQ. And so you yourself said it. The role of a CEO is to be a people person. Like a lot of the work that they do is to inspire people. I don't see a way around this for CEO. My personal perspective on this, and it's kind of interesting. Like I got booked by one of the top search firms next week to interview on that particular topic. My personal belief is that AI is a tool, is an enabler in the pocket of a CEO, but it's just that it's an enabler, it's not a substitute for what they have to do. And
Yeah.
so there's like there's a lot of things that get left unsaid. And yes, you can layer tools within your communication layers of a company that analyzes sentiment and things like that. It's still not a substitute for being able to meet with a person and read kind of like what their situation is, or kind of like read body
Yeah.
language and understand like what's happening in their lives and what they may be going through. So this is my personal belief. It's increasingly going to become more important. It's going to facilitate faster decisions. It's not going to become a replacement or a substitute for decision making.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
But
First of all,
yeah.
I would like to say to the CEOs out there who listen and don't feel that they're a people person, I'm also only in some situations a people person. I can be very happy just being by myself, and that's true for CEOs of big companies too. So if you're a more technically minded person and not a people person, but your company actually needs a people person, that would be a great example for somebody who can hire for the weaknesses.
Yep.
You don't need to be that person. A CEO does so many things, and in the end is just the accountable person for success, for mission accomplished.
Okay.
Somehow. And if that person is not a people person, and I know quite many of these people who are not people-oriented, CEOs who are not people-oriented, they can be very successful at the job. Just understand that somebody needs to take care of the people if people are crucial to your success.
I agree.
And understanding that you have that as a weakness or a blind spot is the first step in that direction.
I agree. Dave, can we just shift gears slightly and talk about the CEO Sparring System and kind of like how you develop this model? What does it look like? What are the outcomes that are being achieved through the CEO Sparring?
Yeah. So that happened, or we started it at a time, we started to develop it at a time when we were still thinking that our business model would be a platform model, where we bring in the CEOs, the progressive CEOs who we work with, and on the other hand side, we connect them to third-party vendors. And we didn't even plan to have our own product in that sense. But a CEO of a company with 60 staff came to me and said, I don't want a coach. I don't want a mentor. I don't want a consultant. I know where I'm going. I know where I'm headed. What I really want is a sparring partner. Somebody who challenges my ideas so that I can improve them. And that's what he wanted. And it stuck with me for years before we even started developing that. And then over 3 different sprints, over the years, I worked with different groups of people on it. Always when somebody made a promise, like for instance, I will sell this in country X, right? And then we put together a group, some people worked on this, and then I understood that it would be me doing it. So I was like, this is not my business model, stop. But at some point, I was in touch with my creator of this program, Thomas Stocker, who is now the head of Sparring System here at Boom. And together with him, I was able to take it to the level where we can actually deploy it. And what it does and why we have developed it is because something like this doesn't exist. And I want to take it back to what you said, where I started to smile when you said adversarial. That's exactly it. Because if you don't get the pushback in the company, because people don't want to treat you like that, and all you would get is some well-meant feedback, a little bit of pro, a little bit of con, but nothing that really cuts. But you need to have something that really cuts. You need real pushback. Then you don't have that. Where would you get it? Of course, you can talk with friends if you have that. I don't know where else you would get it, but if you want it as a system, somebody needs to deliver that to the market. And we decided to deliver that to the market. So what it really is the CEO brings a piece of actual CEO work to the sparring match. It's inspired by boxing, where the concept of sparring comes from. They come into a sparring match. It's even organized like a boxing match. 3 minutes round, 1 minute break, 3 minutes round, 1 minute break. And what we do is we have somebody who in the virtual corner of a Zoom call, typically, comes out of their corner and attacks your presentation. So you start presenting as the CEO, and this person attacks you. Based on a brief, of course, we use AI in the preparation phase, and we make sure that this person doesn't only act as themselves, but they are a senior professional who has seen the world, understands the situation of a CEO, and then they come in loaded with additional information about the person who that CEO will actually deliver the presentation to once they're out of our room. So that sparring partner's job is to attack you, to throw you off balance. And like with boxing, the idea in boxing when they do sparring is they are preparing for a big match, but what they cannot have is an open lip or a cut above the eye or even worse, a brain damage, which they get from boxing, right? So what they have developed is this idea of sparring where somebody who is at your level comes in and boxes with you. But if you're open, you've let your defense down. If you're open and they could hit you in the face, they will not. And that's exactly the same thing. So we're building this protected room where we go at you, like we challenge you hard. We stress test the thing that you bring into the room. And if it breaks, you will look really bad, but only to the room, and the room is on your side. And that's the idea behind the CEO Sparring System.
I mean, I absolutely love this idea because it provides them with this intimate conversation where they don't feel like to your point, they don't feel like they're losing their authority, but at the same time, the CEO Sparring System leads them to make better decisions. They don't have to be defensive because it's subordinate. They can just be themselves and just. I was listening yesterday to a podcast, Masters of Scale, and they had David Epstein on it. And so the art of range, the art of in the box, I think it's around limitations, kind of restrictions, limitation leads you to be creative. And so David Epstein came out with criticism for Malcolm Gladwell around the 10,000 hour concept. And Malcolm Gladwell welcomed his criticism. And David Epstein found this to be really, really surprising because it's criticism. And what Malcolm Gladwell had, essentially the way that he reacted is I learned more from my critics than from my fans. Because it's if somebody's taking the time to critique me in a constructive way, there's got to be a reason for it. So let me explore kind of what this looks like. Yeah.
Well, how we do it, you mean?
Yeah. I'm just gonna this was more of a comment
on what Malcolm said.
Yeah.
Understand. So in our case, the only thing that I would like to push back here on is it's not an intimate conversation. It really feels like a battle.
Okay.
So you start presenting, for instance, what could a piece of CEO work be? It can be a presentation that you're going to give to the boardroom, to the board of directors. It can be that you have to meet investors. It can be that you have to fire somebody. You're not sure about hiring somebody. You have an issue with one of your key people, and there is nobody internally who you can speak about that with. Any memo even that you put out, you go into an interview with the New York Times soon, and you need to be prepared, for instance. You can do that with your internal PR person, but perhaps not. So you want to be prepared. And in order to be prepared, you come into our room and you get the pushback that you need so that you find out what breaks before you're actually out there, so that it doesn't break in public.
Dave, you've coined the phrase progressive CEO. Have you developed any kind of a pattern that you resort to that would give you a sense this person will likely succeed in the age of AI? They are somebody that is very progressive in their thinking. And how would you juxtapose a progressive CEO versus maybe somebody that's more traditional?
Yeah, I just experienced a great moment yesterday, because I have had a Google alert on progressive CEO for years. And usually what comes up in a Google alert is the CEO of the company called Progressive in the US. There are even several of them, Progressive Health and Progressive the Insurer. So that's what has been Progressive CEO until now in my Google alerts. Yesterday, for the first time, somebody used Progressive CEO, and it was the newspaper, the French newspaper Le Monde. And they used it for Dario Amadei, the CEO of Anthropic. And they literally, in their English translation, it was written in French, but in their English translation version, they said the progressive CEO Dario Amadei of Anthropic. And I was like, and by the way, that's a good one. Dario Amadei, of course, right now, he's a bit of a star, right? In the world of AI. So it's so funny to me. And I had a little celebration dance that it's the first time that somebody calls somebody a progressive CEO, and it's not me who does that. And then it's Dario Amadei. How do we know whether somebody in our filter, according to our definition, is a progressive CEO or not? I have seen CEOs who don't want their company to grow. Hard to understand, but one person that I have in my mind literally told me, if my board wants the company to grow, they will have given me the mandate, at which point I will go back and tell them how much it will cost them to execute on the growth plan. Until then, we just stay as we are. Now, that would not be a great client for Boom. They don't want to grow. Then the growth part, I also connected to the willingness and desire even to grow personally. If somebody feels that they have achieved what you can achieve in life, and their personality has hit the glass ceiling and they're super happy with themselves, then I would go rather with Malcolm Gladwell than Mr. Epstein, the other Epstein, David Epstein, I think you meant. So somebody who still wants to grow, somebody who's still interested and curious in getting that pushback is more interesting to us, because I believe that this person will achieve bigger things in the future, independently 100%. From what has been achieved in the past. Then it's about health as well, like somebody who just kills themselves in the job. I'm not really interested in that. It's the same with people who have no worries about the world, the planet as a whole. I just can't live with it. It's like, yeah, of course you can do that. And I understand that we all need energy and all of these things. I'm not against that. I also understand we have wars. It's not this is not a leftist position in any way. It's just understand that the world is a thing as a whole, and that our businesses need to have their place inside of that overall system. So that is one element too. And then one strong accent of this is on, do you understand how important the people, at least the key people in your business, are to your success? And if you do understand that, then let's do something about it, because the way that we have led humans over decades, perhaps since forever, has not been up to the task, I would say. And there is so much science out there and technology out there that would help us do much better. So let's use that and do a better job at leading humans and making sure that their potential actually gets used in the workplace.
Makes sense. I couldn't agree more. Like, It's like fine wine. Everything has to be in harmony. It has to be balanced. If you have one element accentuated over another element, it just like the product becomes edgy. And so in the case of SEO, you need to have that right balance, and the balance needs to shift based on the environment or stage of the company, or maybe in this case the guardrails that are imposed by the board, but it needs to be in balance. I know we're at time, Dave. Any parting thoughts and words of wisdom?
No, just I would just like to make the point that you already made when it comes to AI. We talked about AI quickly two times in the conversation. I think one thing that you said is super important. You are the thinker. You, together with the LLMs, you build a new system. That's a new kind of CEO. You are the enhanced CEO, as you said. I like to call them enhanced or amplified. So do other people too. I really feel like a different person thanks to my LLMs and what I can do with them. But if you want to use them well, it takes time. Many CEOs don't have time. Back-to-back meetings, no time in between. It's hard for them to even understand the ins and outs of a regular chatbot, a regular LLM in the physical body of a chatbot. So you need to understand whatever it is and whatever you hear out there, whatever the hype promise is, understand that you are still the person who needs to do the thinking. And this is a tool, and it will help you do better thinking. But you need to be the thinker even more than before, because now all the BS ideas that you get from the LLM, among other players in your system, sounds so polished and looks so great and comes in perfect English. And it's just hard to judge. And judgment of the CEO has become even more important based on the AI tools that you can work with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Dave. That has been one fantastic conversation. I took a lot of validation in my thinking. Obviously, you are the one that is the expert and specializes in this, but this has been amazing. I'm sure that our listeners and viewers will take a lot out of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Maxim. That was a great conversation.
My pleasure.